US 64 eastbound. Yeah. Alright, we've made it. Today, I'll be talking about US Highway 64 eastbound. The highway is 2,300 miles long, going through desert, grassland, mountainous terrain, and coastal swampland, and finally ending on the coast of North Carolina. This highway was requested by ThatOtherNorthCarolinian because US 64 used to go through Asheboro, where they used to live, but now US 64 bypasses Asheboro, so that's why I'm doing this highway. Plus, again, this is one of the highways that I can relate to. So let's get started. As you can see here, US 64 begins in Arizona at an intersection just 5 miles away from the Arizona-New Mexico border, then travels through northern New Mexico and through the Oklahoma Panhandle, and then through central Arkansas and southern Tennessee and through central North Carolina, finally ending on the coast in Nags Head, North Carolina at an intersection with US 158 and North Carolina Highway 12. So let's get started. So here US 64 begins at an intersection with US 160 here in Arizona near the Four Corners National Monument, and the way to get to the Four Corners National Monument is you take 160, but we're going to be staying on US 64. And then literally 5 miles later we enter the state of New Mexico, and then our first mileage sign in New Mexico we get Shiprock 19 miles and Farmington 48. And then here in Shiprock, we meet US 491, and we're going to be current with US 491 for a brief moment. Fun fact, US 491 used to be US 666, but AASHTO decided to change the numbering back in 2004. So after crossing the San Juan River in Shiprock, US 491 leaves US 64, and US 64 continues east towards Farmington. And then after passing through Farmington, New Mexico, in our next town, Bloomfield, New Mexico, we meet US 550, and 550 is going to be concurrent with US 64. And then here's where 550 splits off from 64. And then after traveling through a sparse mountainous area in northern New Mexico, we meet US 84 here in Chama, New Mexico, and we're going to be concurrent with US 84. And then US 64 and 84 goes through the southern part of Chama, and then here in the middle of nowhere in mountainous New Mexico, US 64 splits off from US 84. And then after going through more mountainous area, we meet US 285, and again in the middle of nowhere. And after going through more mountainous area and going through the city of Taos, we meet Interstate 25 and its exit 446. But I'm not going to show the signage on Interstate 25 because that's for 64 West, and right now we're on 64 East. So after being concurrent with Interstate 25 for 5 miles, US 64 and US Highway 87 are leaving Interstate 25 to go east towards Raton and Clayton. And then here in Clayton, New Mexico, US 64 is leaving US 87 and going to be joining US 56 and US Highway 412. And they're going to head east. In fact, right before we get to Oklahoma, we're actually passing right by the northwestern corner of Texas. And then after that fun little thing you can do, we're passing into the state of Oklahoma. And then here, our first mileage sign in Oklahoma, we have Boise City 3 miles and Gunman 65. And then on our way to Boise City, US 385 joins, making this a quad highway with US 56, 64, 385, and 412. And look, it's all in numerical order, so well done, Oklahoma Dot. Here in Boise City, we have a roundabout around the Searman County Courthouse, and to get onto 412, 56, and 64, you take the easternmost exit, while US 385 exits at the northernmost one. And then here, out within the outskirts of Boise City, we meet US Highway 287, which you can either take south to get to points in Texas, or north to Lyman, Colorado. And here in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, US 56 is splitting off from US 64 and 412. and US 412 and 64 are going towards Diamond and Oklahoma City. Here in Diamond, US 64 is going to be joining US 54, while US 412 is leaving the two highways to go towards its own way. And then here in the here in Hooker, Oklahoma, US 64 is leaving US 54 to go east. And then in the middle, and then after traveling a certain amount of miles, US 64 is joining US 83 in the middle of nowhere. And then in the middle of nowhere, US 64 is leaving US 83 but is joining US 270 south. Here, US 270 is leaving US 64 in the middle of nowhere, and at this exact point here, there's a roadside table where you can just stop, sit down, and have a picnic. And then after leaving US 270, US 283 joins the party, and again, look, there's another picnic table. And then US 283 is leaving US 64 in the middle of nowhere. And then here outside of Buffalo, we're in the next town, Buffalo, Oklahoma, we're meeting US 183, and US 183 and 64 meet current through Buffalo, Oklahoma. After going through Buffalo, US 183 is leaving, and US 64 is continuing east. Here in Alva, Oklahoma, we're meeting US 281, and those two highways are meeting current through the town of Alva. As you can see here, US 281 is leaving. And then here we're meeting US 60 and 81 in the middle of nowhere, and US 64 is going to be joining US 60 West and 81 South. Here in Enid, Oklahoma, we're reuniting with US 412. And then after going through Enid, we're joining Interstate 35, and US 412 is going to be turning into a turnpike, so it's going to be tolled from here on out till Tulsa. And then US 64 leaves Interstate 35, and it's signed East Fort Perry. And still here in Perry, we're meeting US 77. After going through Perry, we're meeting US 177 in the middle of nowhere. And then this is outside of Cleveland, Oklahoma. We're meeting US 412, which is still signed east for Tulsa. And then on US 412 itself, we have State Highway 64 instead of US 64, signed for Morrison and Pawnee. So after going through Morrison and Pawnee, US 64 joins US 412 to become tolled until we're in the outskirts of northwestern Tulsa. And we're going to be joining Interstate 244 West. On Interstate 244, we're now going to be joining the hidden designation of Interstate 444, but it is not signed. It is signed on Google Maps, but not signed on like actual map or the actual road itself. So I just want to let y'all know that we're going to be joining Interstate 444, or also known as US 75. And then US 64 leaves US 75 and Interstate 444 to head east towards Broken Arrow, a suburb in Tulsa. Here in the suburbs of Tulsa, we're meeting Interstate 44, which is signed east for Joplin and west for Oklahoma City. And then this is south of Tulsa. US 64 is meeting US 62. And then here in Muskogee, Oklahoma, we're leaving US 62 and joining US 69. And now outside of Muskogee, US 64 is leaving US 69 to head east towards State Highway 165. Here in Warner, Oklahoma, we're meeting US 266, which is one of the only two child routes of US 66 still around today. The other one is being US 166 in Kansas, but we're meeting US 266 here, and which takes you to Interstate 40, and US 64 is going to be heading east here. So after going through other small towns, we're meeting US 59 here in Sallisaw, Oklahoma. As still in Sallisaw, we're meeting US 59. Or US 59. Still in Sallisaw, we meet Interstate 40 for the first time, and it's signed west for Oklahoma City. And then after passing through by Interstate 40 another time and going through other small towns, finally on the bridge towards Fort Smith, Arkansas, after a 560-mile journey in Oklahoma. So welcome to Fort Smith, Arkansas, where it has a population of 89,000 people. And I turned Fort Smith, we're going to be joining US 71 business. And you can turn right to turn on to US 271, but we're turning left to stay on 64. Here outside of Fort Smith, the downtown area, we're meeting Interstate 540. And after that 540 interchange, we have a mileage sign for Alma 6 miles away. And in Alma, US 71 business is going to be leaving US 64. As you can see here, US 64 parallels Interstate 40 here. And after going through Alma and in the next town, Mulberry, we have a mileage sign for US 64, which is signed east for Ozark, 14 miles away, and Clarksville 37. Here in Clarksville, Arkansas, we meet Interstate 40 once again, which is signed west for Fort Smith and signed east for Little Rock. And then still in Clarksville, we have another mileage sign, which US 64 signed east for Lamar 3 miles and Russellville 24. After passing through Russellville, which is a major college town in Arkansas, we finally enter the city of Conway, Arkansas. We're going to meet US 65 business, and we're going to be concurrent with US 65 business south. Here we meet Interstate 40 once again, still on Conway, and there's no mileage sign this time. And then after passing through several small towns, we enter the next town of Beebe, Arkansas. We're going to be joining with US 67 and 167. And then after being concurrent with 67 and 167 for roughly 30 miles, US 64 is splitting off from US 67, so is 167. But after that, interchange, they're going to be splitting ways. So after that, splitting off with US 167, US 64 is signed east for Augusta and Memphis. And then on our way to West Memphis, we meet US 63 and US 49, which is signed north for Jonesboro and south for Brinkley. And then here in West Memphis, Arkansas, we meet Interstate 55 and US 61. And we're going to be concurrent with Interstate 55 south into Memphis. And then here's the Welcome to Tennessee sign here in Memphis. And then immediately the first exit in Memphis, we're going to be leaving Interstate 55 while it's signed south for Jackson, Mississippi. And we're going to be concurrent with US 61 and US 70 and US 79. Here at this intersection, US 61 is leaving, and US 64, US 70, and 79 are heading right towards the downtown Memphis. Here in downtown Memphis, we meet the beginning of US 78, but there are no signs to prove it, but this is, here on Google Maps, this is the beginning of US 78. And then up the road, here in the heart of downtown Memphis, we're meeting US 51, and we're going to be concurrent with US 51 for probably half a mile. And then as you can see here, US 51 leaves right after we exit the downtown area. Still in Memphis, we're meeting Interstate 240, which is just signed south. And then here, after meeting Interstate 240, we're here meeting the beginning of US 72. And if you want to see the US 72 video, it's in the top right corner here. And then after meeting US 72, we're meeting Interstate 40 once again, and has assigned to West 240. And after passing Interstate 40, US 64 is leaving US 70 and 79 to head east. And then on our way out of the Memphis metro area, we're meeting Interstate 40 once again, which is signed east for Nashville and west for Memphis. And on Interstate 40 itself, US 64 is signed east for Somerville and Bolivar. And after we head to those two towns, we're meeting Interstate 269. And after passing through those middle of nowhere towns, Somerville and Bolivar, Tennessee, here we're meeting US 45 just outside of Selmer, Tennessee. And then US 45 leaves US 64 still in Selmer. And then on our way to our next town here in Tennessee, we're meeting US 641, which takes you north to points north of here. And we're also meeting the Natchez Trace Parkway shortly after meet US 641. Here outside of the Lawrenceburg area, we meet US 43, which is signed for Lawrenceburg and Loretto. And on US 43 itself, US 64 signed west for Waynesboro and east for Pulaski. Here in Pulaski, Tennessee, we meet US 31, and on US 31, US 64 is signed east for Fayetteville. And then on our way towards Fayetteville, Tennessee, we meet Interstate 65. Here in Fayetteville, we're going to be joining with US 231, and we're also meeting US 431, but 231 is going to be joining us. Here, after being concurrent with US 231, US 64 is splitting off from that highway, and right before you get to this intersection, there is a mileage sign for US 64 East, which is signed east for Lynchburg and Winchester. Lynchburg is 15 miles away, and Winchester is 31. And then here in Winchester, we're meeting US 41A, which is signed east for Winchester and Cowan. And after passing US 41 alternate, we're meeting Interstate 24. Here, we're like 20 miles north of Kimball, Tennessee. And then here in Kimball, we're meeting US 72 once again. And we're going to be concurrent with US 72 all the way up until Chattanooga. Again, if you want to see that video, it's in the top right corner. Here in Chattanooga, we meet US 11 and US 64 splitting off from US 41 and US 72 to head east. And then here we're actually meeting US 41 and 76 again. And then here they are going back west. And then after passing through Chattanooga, or this is still in the Chattanooga metro area, Interstate 75, we're going to be joining with Interstate 75 North. Here on Interstate 75, US 64 and US 11 is signed east for Utawa. I don't know how to pronounce that. And then we're meeting US 74 and US 64 and US 11 are going to be heading straight into the heart of Cleveland. Here in Cleveland, US 64 is splitting off from US 11, but we don't get a sign here, we just get a sign for State Highway 312 West. And then here in the outer area of Cleveland, Tennessee, US 74 is actually joining us but there's no mention of it. Instead, we get a mention of State Highway 60 and US 64 bypass, which takes you back west to Chattanooga. And then here on that intersection, we have just 64 East and 64 West. And 64 East is signed for Okie, Ducktown, Copper Hill, and Murphy, North Carolina. Here in Ocoee, Tennessee, we meet US 411. And look at the beautiful scenery as we're about to enter the mountainous area of the North Carolina and Tennessee area. And then here we'll have a mileage sign, which is signed for Murphy, which is 55 miles away. Welcome to North Carolina, and as you can see, we have a mileage sign right here. Here, in our first major intersection, North Carolina, we meet US Highway 19 and 129, and they meet current with US 64 and 74 for a brief time. Again, having another quad highway concurrency. And then just outside of Murphy, US 64 is splitting off from these three highways to head east. And then here in Franklin, which is a city in the mountains of North Carolina, US 64 is going to be joining US 441 and US 23 for Sylvia and Brevard. And US 64 splitting off from US 441 and US 23 for Highlands and Franklin. And then on our way to Brevard, we're meeting US 178, which is a child of US 78. And then here in Brevard, we're meeting US 276, and US 276 is going to be concurrent with US 64 through the town of Brevard. Here in northern Brevard, US 276 is splitting off from US 64, and US 64 is heading east. And then here in Hendersonville, we're meeting Interstate 26, which is signed east for Spartanburg and west for Asheville. And it looks like North Carolina is home to, or Batman lives in North Carolina because US 64 is signed east for Batcave. Here in Batcave, we meet US 74 alternate and State Highway 9. And then our next major highway intersection is US 221. And then here in Morganton, North Carolina, we meet Interstate 40 once again, and Interstate 40 is signed east for Hickory and west for Marion. I've never heard of Marion, North Carolina. I've heard of Hickory because it's a major a mountainous city in North Carolina, but I've never heard of Marion. I wonder why NC DOT signs Marion. Still here in Morganton, North Carolina on US 64, we meet US 70 once again. And here in Lenoir, North Carolina, we're meeting US 321, and on US 321 here, US 64 is signed east for Wilkesboro. We have a mileage sign after we exit the town of Lenoir, and it's signed for Taylorsville, 19 miles away. And then here in Statesville, we're meeting Interstate 40 once again, and it's signed east for Statesville and west for Hickory. Still in Statesville, we're meeting US 70 once again, and we're going to be turning right here, or left. Here in downtown Stateville, we're meeting US 21, and we're going to be concurrent with US 21. And then US 21 leaves immediately after, and here in the outskirts of Statesville, we meet Interstate 40 once again. Here in Mocksville, North Carolina, we're meeting US 601, and we're going to be concurrent with US 601 through the center of Mocksville. And then here's the beginning of US 158 here in Mocksville, and if you want to see that video, that's also in the top right corner here too. So after passing through Mocksville, US 601 leaves, and US 64 is by itself again. And here in Lexington, which is in central North Carolina, we meet Interstate 285, which is brand new, and US 52, which is signed north for Winston-Salem and south for Charlotte. And then US 64 is going to be joining with Interstate 85 business, US 29 and US 70 still here in Lexington. And then US 64 is leaving those three highways to head east towards Asheboro, the reason why I'm doing this highway. On our way to Asheboro, we meet Interstate 85, which is signed east for Charlotte and west for Queensboro. And then here on the outskirts of Asheboro, we're going to be taking this exit for US 64 business, which US 64 stays straight going through a bypass of Asheboro. But we're going to be going through Asheboro because it was requested. Here in Asheboro, our first major intersection is Interstate 73 and 74, and US 220, which is signed southeast for Rockingham and northwest for Randleman and Greensboro. I've never heard of Randleman, North Carolina, but I've heard of Greensboro. And then our next major intersection is actually the way to the zoo. I wonder which way at the stoplight would take to get to the zoo. How about the left way for Zoo Parkway? And after meeting the zoo stoplight intersection, we meet North Carolina Highway 42, which is a major highway in eastern North Carolina. And after going through the town of Asheboro, we reunite with US 64. But this is the sign for US 64 West, because if we head straight, we're actually going to be back on the US 64. On our way to here in Ramsey, a town on our way towards Siler City, we have a mileage sign for Siler City 18 miles away and Pittsboro 32. And here in Siler City, we meet US 421, which is signed south for Sanford and north for Greensboro. And then after passing through Siler City, this is here in Pittsboro on a freeway part, and we're meeting US 15 and 501, which is signed for Chapel Hill, Sanford, and Carthage. And on 15501 itself, US 64 is signed west for Pittsboro, or no, it's signed east for Raleigh, while US 15 and 501 are heading towards Pittsboro. And then after meeting up with US 64 business again, on the eastern part of Pittsboro, we have a mileage sign which is signed for Cary 23 miles away and Raleigh 30. The reason is they're so close is because Cary and Raleigh are basically within the same metro area. And then on our way towards Raleigh, we're meeting the Joint Lake, which is a very huge lake, by the way. Also, I come here and recommend if you ever come to North Carolina, if you like camping or boating, you should just come to this lake. And after crossing over Jordan Lake, we have another mileage sign, this time mentioning Rocky Mount. We have Raleigh 23 miles away and Rocky Mount 78. And then here we meet North Carolina Highway 751, which is the way if you want to get to Durham from here, you take 751 north. 751 also takes you to the South Point Mall in Durham, which is one of the few major malls in the area. And then here, after meeting US 751, this is all one big interchange, which is for 540 and Kelly Road. And this would be exit 400, which is literally a mile up the road, and it's for North Carolina Highway 55, signed for Apex and Durham. This is a direct way if you want to get into Apex or up to Durham. And then here's the mile after that, exit 401. This is Salem Street, but it's actually signed for Apex downtown, which I recommend if you ever come and visit this area. And on the Apex downtown exit, US 64 is signed west for Pittsburgh and east for Raleigh. And then after 3 miles up the road, we meet US 1, and US 1 is signed south for Sanford, and US 1 north and 64 east is signed for Raleigh. So after US 64 and US 1 go through the town of Cary, US 64 is going to be leaving with Interstate 40 to head east towards Benson and Rocky Mount. And then here on Interstate 40, this is the exit for the State Farmers Market here in Raleigh. And then this is where we meet US 70 and US 401, which if you want to watch the US 401 video, it's in the top right corner once again. And here's the Raleigh skyline, as you can see from Interstate 40 and US 64. Here we meet US 40 or Interstate 87 and Interstate 440 West, and US 64 is going to be joining them, heading east towards Rocky Mount. Here in on 440, Interstate 87 and US 64 and 264 is leaving at 440 West to head towards Rocky Mount, Wilson, and Greenville. And then here on Interstate 87, we're meeting 540, which takes you to US 1, signed for Wake Forest and the airport. And then here's the end of Interstate 87, and we're just having US 64 and 264 by itself, which is signed east for Greenville, Wilson, and Rocky Mount. Here, this is where 264 is splitting off while US 64 heads east, and we're just meeting a rural highway for like 20-30 miles. In fact, on our way to Interstate 95 in Rocky Mount, we meet North Carolina Highway 58, which takes you all the way down to the beach. And then here in Rocky Mount, we meet Interstate 95, which is signed for Fayetteville and Richmond. And then we also meet US 301 here in Rocky Mount. Here in Tarboro, the next town over, we meet US 258, which takes you to US 158, and US 64 and US 258 are going to be concurrent for half or a mile. As you can see here, US 258 leaves. And then here we meet North Carolina Highway 42 again, like 100 miles east of where we first met it. Here we're meeting US 13, and US 13 is going to be concurrent with US 64. And here we are, 500 miles into North Carolina. And then we meet US 17 at exit 514, and US 17 is going to be concurrent with us for a mile. In fact, here where US 64 leaves US 13 and 17 to head east towards Plymouth and Manteo. And then we have a mileage sign finally, and it's signed Jamesville is signed 9 miles away, Plymouth is 20, and Manteo is 91. Here we meet US 264 before we're about to go to the coast. In fact, this is a bridge into the Outer Banks regional area. And then finally, after entering the Outer Banks, we end at an intersection with US 158, North Carolina Highway 12. With that, we end US 64. And move on to the DerpHog, the way it should be for US 64 East. So for US 64 East, signed for Shiprock for US 491. In Farmington because it's a major town in northwestern New Mexico with 49,000 people. And then Bloomfield for US 550. And then Taos because Taos is a major city too. And then after Taos, Interstate 25. And then Clayton for the 87 412 56 interchange. In Boise City, Oklahoma, because it's another major interchange where the 4 highways split off. And then Guyman for another major interchange. And then Enid because there's not really that. And then another major interchange. And then Tulsa because everyone knows Tulsa. The reason I wouldn't sign Tulsa from the jump is because it's like 600 miles away from the start of US 64. And after Tulsa, I'd go Muskogee because Muskogee has another major interchange. And after Muskogee, I'd do Fort Smith because again, it's well known. And after Fort Smith, Clarksville, and then Russellville, and then Conway. And after Conway, I'd do Memphis, like how Arkansas does it. And then after Memphis, I'd do Selmer because Selmer is where we meet US 45, and US 45 is a major highway in that region. And then after Selmer, we meet Pulaski, which is also for US 31, another major highway. And then after Pulaski, we meet Fayetteville, and then Winchester, and then Jasper because of US 72, and US 41, and then Chattanooga after Jasper. Because if I did Chattanooga straight from Winchester, you can take Interstate 24 to get to Chattanooga instead of just 64. So that's why I put Jasper between Winchester and Chattanooga. And after Chattanooga, I'll do Cleveland, Tennessee, and then after Cleveland, I'll do Murphy, North Carolina, and then Brevard, because of being a cultural area, and US 276. And then Hendersonville because of Interstate 26, and then Morganton because of Interstate 40, and then Menora because of US 321, and Statesville because it actually makes sense to sign Statesville on a US highway instead of Interstate 40. So I do Statesville because of Interstate 40 and US 70 and US 21, and then Mocksville because of US 158 and US 601. And then Lexington because of Interstate 285 and US 52, and then Asheboro because of Interstate 73, 74, and US 220, and because that's where the zoo is. And then Pittsboro after Asheboro because Pittsboro is another huge town in North Carolina, and it's where we meet US 15 501, which takes you north of Durham. And then Jordan Lake because of all the activities you can do at Jordan Lake. And then Apex because that's the next major town. And then Raleigh because of US 1 and Interstate 440. And then Rocky Mount because of Interstate 95. And then Tarboro because of US 258. And then Williamston because of US 1317. And then finally, after all of that, we're going to do the Nags Head and Outer Banks area. So thank you guys for watching US 64 Eastbound. I know it's a long video, but it's 2,300 miles, so what were you expecting? I'll now be working on some smaller highways before I do US 64 westbound. So expect my next highways video to be up soon. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.